Welcome to Talk+Water, the podcast associated with the Texas+Water newsletter, which provides timely information on the spectrum of Texas water issues, including science, policy, and law. Texas+Water is published jointly by the Meadows Center for Water and the Environment at Texas State University, the Texas Water Journal, and the Texas Water Resources Institute at Texas A&M University. You can sign up for Texas+Water by visiting texas+water.org/newsletter. My name is Todd Votteler, and I'm the editor-in-chief of Texas+Water and the Texas Water Journal, as well as your host for Talk+Water. This is podcast number 10. My guests today are Clint Wolfe and Daniel Cunningham. Clint Wolfe is the project manager for the Water University at Texas A&M University AgriLife. Clint facilitates a team of water resource professionals to assist with water research and outreach programming, including water quality, water use efficiency, and watershed planning. He works with local governments, state and federal agencies, and other entities to develop programs dealing with water quantity and quality issues. Clint specializes in program development, stakeholder facilitation, communications, and marketing. Daniel Cunningham is also with us. Daniel's a horticulturist at the Water University at Texas A&M University AgriLife. Daniel teaches professionals and the public the most current sustainability information about landscape water use, including design, plant selection, and water-conserving landscape management practices. His primary focus is a holistic approach to landscaping and food production systems. Daniel specializes in native plants and trees, vegetable gardening, edible landscaping, rainwater harvesting. He's also passionate about utilizing landscapes as habitat for beneficial wildlife. So with all that, welcome Clint and Daniel, and thank you for being part of Talk+Water.
Awesome. Thank you for having us. Thank you.
So, Clint, Daniel, let's start out with your backgrounds in water. How did you first become involved with water issues?
Yes, this is Daniel. So I guess I first got started doing undergraduate research in West Texas. We were looking at native plant species, isolating plants that would do well in an urban setting. And we had extreme drought during that time. And so just seeing how well that the native plants handled the extreme heat and drought of West Texas. And I enjoyed that so much that decided to pursue it, a master's program that took me to northwest Kenya, the Turkana region, one of the driest parts of Africa, where they get about 5 inches of rainfall a year, developing food production systems, harvesting water in the ground and through cisterns to help feed a people that were in need. So hopefully taking some of those same principles here to urban North Texas, trying to get folks to save water on a larger scale.
Oh, that's great. Clint?
Well, this is Clint, and my story is not as cool as Daniel's. I actually applied for a job as an undergrad in college. I was actually getting a degree in animal science, and I have a degree in animal science, and didn't know what I wanted to do after getting my bachelor's. I was actually working for Dr. Alan Jones at the Texas Water Resources Institute, and he said there will always be a job in water in Texas. So I ended up getting my master's in natural resource economics with a focus on water issues, and so just became passionate about all the realms and issues related to water. So that's kind of how I got started.
Well, that sounds pretty cool to me. I like that. So tell me about the program that you're both part of and how it can help anyone who's interested in saving water and what other benefits it provides. And also, tell me a little bit about how you came up with the name.
Sure, this is Clint. We started Water University about 11 years ago. We didn't call it Water University then. It was called the Urban Water Program, based out of the AgriLife Research and Extension Center here in Dallas. And our primary focus was looking at water from an urban issue standpoint. So looking at water quality, urban landscape issues related to water conservation and use efficiency, and really looking at how we can affect and change behavior of our local homeowners who are probably a large water user, especially during the summer months here in Dallas. So with the program, Water University, we conduct about 20 different topics related to native and adaptive plants, DIY irrigation, classes on fruit and vegetable production, composting, you name it. If it has to do with water or ties into water management or stormwater management, we'll teach classes on it. We often joke that some of our classes don't actually when you first look at them, don't actually scream water conservation, but we call that our bait and switch, because we started off teaching classes called landscape water conservation, and we had trouble getting the seats filled, but we call it butterfly gardening. We get 300 people. So that's kind of how we have converted over the years, trying to get people what people are really interested in and hot topics, and relating them back to water conservation and stormwater management. If you come to any one of our classes, they range from an hour to 2 hours in length. The first 15 minutes, you're going to get a lesson on the water cycle, where your water comes from, how important it is to protect water quality, and how to conserve water in the landscape. So that's a given, and most of our partners agree to that and are very happy that we do that.
Sure. Yeah, this is Daniel, and I think, Clint mentioned our partners, and that's really critical, I think, with the success that we've had as a program, is we partner with 40 different cities and municipalities across the north central Texas region, and actually across the state of Texas, over 100 different community partners that have a similar message and building on what they've done and helping them out. And homeowners are definitely a main target, but we also target landscape architects. We target irrigation specialists, rainwater harvesting specialists, and now have been doing more work with homeowners associations and developers trying to get water conservation designed into urban areas from the ground floor.
So
yeah, we kind of.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, please.
I was just going to say, Water University, we have our tagline for our program is, you can't get a degree, but you can get an education. So that's what our goal is, to educate people on all issues related to water.
And so you're located in Dallas or Fort Worth, right?
We're located in Dallas.
Okay, but you do work all over the state. And so do you hold the workshops in different parts of the state?
Yeah, this is Clint. So like Daniel mentioned earlier, we try to do our programs with our partners, and a lot of our partners are municipalities or water providers. And so we actually go to the people. We found it, most people don't want to drive over 20 minutes to a program, if they will drive to a program at all. And so we actually host, the cities are our host, and we actually go to their facilities and teach our classes. We do teach classes at our research facility here in Dallas. We've been under construction for the past 2.5 years, so we just built a brand new building, so we're going to be anxious to get classes back here at our campus this fall. But yeah, we found it easier to go to the people. We actually, not only during our classes, but whenever there's an event where people are actually going already, so Earth Day activities, any kind of outdoor activities, having booths or presence there and handing out information or giving small talks. That's kind of been our mantra of how we reach people the best.
Okay, so, we've all heard at some point that Texas is a state in perpetual drought interrupted by the occasional flood. So I'm curious, what does it mean when we refer to drought-proofing our landscape? What does that really entail?
Yeah, that's a great question, Todd. This is Daniel, and that's actually something we say a lot. I like to quote the iconic Texas weatherman Harold Taft that the only way to end a drought is with a flood. And really, I think this past year in north central Texas, but also I know in central Texas they saw this, where we had the driest growing season that we had in 109 years. So from March 1st to July 25th, it was extremely dry. And then in the fall, we had record rainfall, record September, October, making it the second wettest year on record. So, I think it was a good year to kind of drive home that. But basically, we teach people how to drought-proof landscape by thinking about landscape design holistically. We take into account multiple facets of water conservation, including irrigation efficiency, but also stormwater management. And then we also look at not only plant but soil health, considering beneficial wildlife, passive heating and cooling. We want to reduce our water footprint also by reducing waste through composting and growing some of our own food at home. And really kind of looks like some of these extreme that we're seeing in our climate are going to happen frequently if we listen to the climate scientists. And so these harsh weather patterns in conjunction with our rapidly growing population really pose some challenges. I will say it's a little bit of a harder sell to talk about water conservation when most of our Texas lakes are full. But we like to say, and the best times to plan for drought or the times when we are seeing floods and vice versa, when we're seeing extreme weather patterns, excessive floodings, then we can plan for drought as well.
Clint, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, so I think that we, as Daniel mentioned, extreme weather patterns is that, the plant palettes we have today are probably not going to be the plant palettes that we have tomorrow. And so we have to continually look at, as we become more urbanized and more populated, our yards are getting smaller, so our plants have to get smaller. We always joke that, when you go and you see now a lot of dwarf varieties in the garden centers, it's because our landscapes are getting smaller. We're living in high-rises or zero-lot line homes. And so we're having much more concrete and less open green space. And so that has impacts not only on water use, for outdoor water use, but also on stormwater management and the quality of water that's running off of those surfaces. So, like Daniel said, we try to teach a holistic approach to conservation and stormwater management. So looking at the entire landscape and the footprint of your home as a source of not only water use, but water capture. And so looking at the beneficial ways of how we can, the water that actually falls on our landscape and on our property, how we can utilize it more than once to make it beneficial and go as far as we can.
So, follow-up to that, you're mentioning the many partners you've got around the state. I imagine some of them are water suppliers and water utilities who are trying to find ways to stretch the supplies they have. And it sounds like there are probably a number of them that have kind of embraced the idea of getting people to use their water for landscaping much more efficiently than they have in the past.
Yes, so this is Clint. We always have a fine line between utilities wanting to sell water because that makes up a huge part of their budget, but also looking at conserving water, and the state water plan has most urban areas a huge percentage, or 20 to 35% of their new water supplies come from conservation. And so it's a balancing act with our cities on, when our lakes are full, it's hard to sell conservation. But a lot of the cities here in North Texas are experiencing rapid growth. And so what comes with that is that in order to maintain the supplies that they have without building new reservoirs or using alternative sources of water, is that we have to stretch those water drops through growing populations. So it is a balancing act that we play with our partners on the need for conservation and also the need to sell water. So
I This is Daniel. I agree completely. I think definitely it's the easiest way to create new water supplies affordably is through conservation. And I think that we are seeing a trend towards conservation going forward, and hopefully that with new technologies will get us where we need to go.
I'm always really amazed at how we underestimated decades ago when I first started off in water management, how much water waste there was and what the per capita use could become eventually without really impacting people's lives negatively. I remember there was a lot of discussion when we were using, close to 300 gallons per capita per day that you could never get anywhere near 140 or 120. But there are some cities, I know the San Antonio water system is planning for less than 100 gallons per capita per day eventually.
Yep. This is Clint. Yeah, so and North Texas has always been, in the past, been known as kind of the water hog area. And I'm happy to say that I think that trend is very much on the downslope, that North Texas has embraced conservation and has really, all of our major water providers, Dallas Water Utilities, Fraternity Regional Water District, North Texas Municipal Water District, and Tarrant Regional Water District have really come together to say conservation is important and really pushing that message forward to all of their customers and customer cities. I think the average, it used to be, less than 20 years ago, probably about 290 GPCD. So, and we're pushing that down to, closer to the 140 number that we would like to see, and lower than that. So people are reacting to conservation and putting in technologies in place that will actually benefit them.
So just to move on to the next question, I was thinking about a 2013 study that was published by the Texas Water Journal. The authors were some of your colleagues or former colleagues at Texas A&M, and they found that urban irrigation was the third largest use of water in Texas, behind agricultural irrigation and other urban uses, which I was pretty shocked about that when I saw that. And so I'm just curious, do we have a sense of like how much, the average, homeowner is using for their lawns and all?
Well, this is Clint, and I will say that those numbers don't surprise me, knowing that lawns are the largest irrigated crop in the United States. So wow. If you take that in perspective, is that our landscapes in urban areas that we like, or people like green lush landscaping, or they used to. And I think we're seeing a decreasing trend in that as well, from traditional landscapes to more drought-tolerant, native adaptive landscapes. Yeah, and this is Daniel. You mentioned that study. There was another study that was done a few years before, the Texas Water Development Board study that was showing in 2008 about 31% of our potable water was used outside in the landscape. And in Dallas, we were a little bit higher than the state average at 41%. Some of the estimations also put us at, during the summer months, as much as 50 to 60% of outdoor water use. And making up the total of our water use as a whole. So really, I think there's a lot of factors that play in there. We hope that we are trending towards water efficiently, especially in a landscape setting. But I do think there's still room for improvement, and we have our jobs cut out for us for sure.
So, I grew up in Dallas, and I remember when I was young in the 70s that, a lot of people didn't really have sprinkler systems. And, you get to August and your lawn would turn brown, and then, it'd rain in September and, lawn would be okay again. And then people started putting in sprinkler systems, and the lawn never turned brown again. And water was much cheaper then, but I never really thought about this. I think about this a lot now, but generally the water that we are putting on our lawns is water treated to drinking standards, which there's a billion people or more across the world would love to have that water or water like that, have access to water like that, but we're putting it on our lawns.
Yes, this is Clint. So that's very important what you just said. So I think there's two issues. Is that you said water was cheap, but I think water still is cheap.
Right.
And so until we have the real cost of, instead of just the cost of treating the water and pushing it through a pipe, through actually put a value on water instead of a nominal fee for transporting it, people are going to continue to waste it, or a certain population will continue to waste it. We also have to look at population growth. You're saying you are from Dallas. Well, 1,100 people now move into the Metroplex a day, roughly. And so we have huge spikes in population, and people coming from all over the world and all over the United States. And so we usually tell people, welcome to Texas, leave your plants at the border, because we don't want them bringing their high water use plants with them. And so whenever we talk to them and they say, oh, well, I didn't know, it's not because they don't want to be efficient, it's because they're not from here, and so they don't know what to do. And so those people that are moving in are one of our target audiences, and we do a new class called the Newcomer's Guide to Gardening in North Texas. And so either for first-time homeowners or from people that are new to Texas, learning what our soil conditions are, how to water efficiently, what plants to plant, what questions to ask. And so that's been one of our top new classes that we have. Another thing that you touched on was irrigation systems. In the old days where we used to turn on the water hose and set the timer, and then it would go off and we went outside and moved the hose. Some people would argue that we were more efficient then, because we thought that the technology was going to make us more efficient. And we've learned that people think that technology makes us more efficient, but behavior change makes us more efficient. And so it's much more difficult to change behavior than to change the irrigation setting. And so a lot of times what we practice and what we preach is telling people to turn your systems off and run it on manual. And they think that's unfathomable why you would go backwards in time and do it the old-fashioned way. But people, when you see your system operate, and when you're much more in tune with your landscaping, you'll utilize less chemicals, utilize less fertilizer, and utilize less water and waste less, because you're actually more in tune with it.
I mean, over time, you can save a lot of money, can't you? I mean, if you do all those things. That's what I keep, seeing in Austin with our water bill. I've got, we kind of going back to what you're saying about, people moving to Texas. So, I'm very blessed to have, a wonderful wife who's from New Orleans. And, the problem in New Orleans is too much water generally compared to here. It's, usually not enough. And so, kind of the whole idea of, taking out your lawn and putting in, something that is maybe, not something you would typically see in most lawns and some of the places where, the kind of new native landscaping is showing up is, it can be kind of a difficult thing for some people.
Sure. Todd, this is Daniel. And to speak to that, there's a lot of potential to save. And one of the ways that we kind of transition people into the best management practices is with a demonstration home. So we've partnered with the EPA's WaterSense program, and we believe we have the only EPA WaterSense labeled home in the country that is open for public tours. We have thousands of people come visit a year. And for those that aren't familiar with the WaterSense program, it's really just like the Energy Star program is to energy efficiency, the WaterSense program is to water efficiency. But this demonstration house on our campus here in Dallas has all the best water-saving features inside the home, but we also take that a step further with a landscape that utilizes our landscape rule of thirds. And so that methodology reduces the typical large lawn-dominated areas. So if we break up our landscape to only about a third turf grass, we have water-efficient turf grass varieties that are actually been developed here through the A&M system. And then we have about a third pervious surfaces, so surfaces that can infiltrate water, our patios, our sidewalks, our pathways throughout the garden. We have dry river beds or arroyos. And then the other third is made up of planted beds utilizing native and adapted plant material that once it's established doesn't need a lot of supplemental irrigation that is kind of grown and evolved with our rainfall patterns here in north central Texas. And then we also utilize newest irrigation technology, multi-stream rotors, which typically are about 60% more efficient when compared to the mist pipe nozzles there. We use drip irrigation in the flower beds. And of course, the entire landscape is irrigated by our 1,000-gallon cistern, and then we have two 55-gallon rain barrels there. So we really try and practice what we preach and then have a hands-on demonstration where we can show folks how to do it.
So let me ask you a follow-up on that. It wasn't that many years ago that it was a real tough sell to get homeowners associations to approve, kind of native landscaping for lawns. And eventually there was legislation passed by the Texas legislature that made it, I guess illegal for an HOA to prohibit that. And so, I'm interested in kind of your reaction from HOAs. Do you find more and more of them who are really kind of keen on getting involved with this, or is it still kind of a tough sell in certain parts of the state?
Well, this is Clint, and you're referring to Senate Bill 198. I think that was passed in 2 legislative sessions ago, and we were extremely happy when it was passed. We do see some HOAs that will get on board and are interested in saving money by saving. HOAs have just the same issues as homeowners. They have large, expensive areas of either turf grass or landscape embedded areas that they're having to irrigate. And so as the price of water goes up, the price of water for them goes up as well. And in some of their larger, expansive areas, with tiered rate structures, the more they use, the higher the price gets. And so some of them have actually, gotten on board, and we've actually done trainings for HOA associations and for their homeowners and also for the management companies that run HOAs to look at how they can become more efficient, what questions they need to ask their landscape company, what are the technologies that they should be implementing. But then we see others that are strictly against them, that we get calls every day from people that have taken our class and be like, I told my HOA about Senate Bill 198 and they don't want to listen to me. And so we tell people that we're not here for legal advice, but just for education. And so, but it can be a catch-22.
This is Daniel, and just kind of following up on that. Unfortunately, there's no regulatory entity for HOAs or property owners association in the state of Texas. So for homeowners, when their HOAs don't want to let them implement some of the practices of Senate Bill 198, their best line of defense is to either work with their HOA's landscape committee to get on that board of the landscape committee and to get involved and to be nice and play nice. The only other option really is to seek legal action, and of course, that's not something we're experts in.
Gotcha. So, Daniel, let me ask you about the native plants themselves. Interest is, there are probably a lot of landowners who just don't really know that there are all sorts of, really fantastic native plants that they can use, and maybe it's more of kind of a process of introducing them to the varieties that are available and how they can really make a garden just look fantastic.
Yeah, so this is Daniel. One of the biggest stigmas that I think we're still trying to get past, or the myth that we hear, is that native plants are weedy, or people think about a native plant landscape that it's just all yuccas and cacti and rocks, and it really couldn't be further from the truth. There are many of the plants that are used in landscapes, commercial, residential, high-end landscapes, not only in Texas but across the country, that are actually native right here within our borders. There are also improved cultivars of those plants, and Clint alluded to that, that have been bred to be more compact and densely blooming, but still have the same heat tolerance and drought tolerance. They prefer our soil types that we have here, and just tend to do a better job growing in the harsh conditions that Texas has to throw our way sometimes. And I think the bread and butter plants that people have planted in the 70s and 80s when water was cheap and we weren't really thinking about that, really are tending to struggle. The other thing that we see a lot is some of those plants, the non-adapted plants, have been planted the same, 10 plants in subdivisions all over the state, and they're seeing more pest problems because of that lack of diversity. So there's a lot of benefits to plant native plants, and, because there are those myths that they're weedy or, it's just these droughty, yucca and cacti, we like to do demonstrations to show people, whether that's in medians along the city or perhaps with HOA situations or even at our new demonstration landscape coming in on our landscape, really to have a landscape where people can walk through and, regardless of if the plant is water efficient, just enjoy and want to plant the plant because it looks pretty. And I think that's something everybody can get behind.
So one of our things, this is Clint, one of our things is we have our top 100 plants of North Texas, and so it's about 80% native plants. And when most people, they're like, oh, I didn't know that was a native plant. And so, like Daniel said, most people think that they're weedy and unkept, but you can have any kind of landscape that you want, whether it's tropical, whether you want a cottage garden look, if you want whatever style of landscaping that you like, you can get that with native and adapted plants that are low water use for your region. So, and that's kind of how we have to tell people. A lot of people are visual, and so they don't know what plants go with which plants, and so that's kind of what we one of our goals is that we try to teach people through demonstrations and through plant groupings. Through our classes, we show people this is what goes together, because some people will do the right thing, they just don't know how to do it. So we say we have about 25% of the DIYers that, you can give them a pamphlet and they'll go and do it. And the rest of them are just like, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And so we try to reach both of those customers through our programs.
So let me pick up on something that you just mentioned, the DIY culture. How is that played out in the response that you see to the workshops? I mean, I'm sure that there are probably some companies, who who are probably interested in landscaping and saving water through landscaping, but a lot of it seems like it's probably driven by individuals who are just working on their own homes.
Yeah, Todd, this is Daniel. Our DIY classes actually seem to be some of our most popular, and I think because they appeal to those people that like to get their hands dirty, but also kind of in terms of education, the DIY classes have greater potential to actually people have that muscle memory. They think they've done this before. And so it really kind of gains that firsthand experience. That could be with our rain barrel class, just installing the faucet for a rain barrel gains ownership in that barrel. A lot of there's other programs where they simply pick up the barrel and they go and are supposed to set it up on their own, but we have an hour and a half long class where we actually work with them and show them the ins and outs of harvesting water, kind of pairing it with the education. But we also do that with some of our other classes, the wildflower classes where we make seed bombs. But all those create ownership, confidence, where people can replicate those tasks at home. And we've actually seen with surveys that people install and maintain the rain barrels, for instance, when those hands-on components are included.
And I'll add to that, this is Clint. Our biggest thing is we want people to be a better educated consumer. So we can look at TV and we can look at Facebook and we can look at the advertisements that are being pushed to us on a daily basis on what to plant, when to spray, what to apply on our yards to make them green and gorgeous. But we want people to be better educated consumers, to look at the scientific data and the information that we put out as a state agency and as professionals in our field, research-based professional information that, doesn't always go along with some of the commercials that we see out there. Related to our DIYers, we've seen a huge shift in the number of people and the demographics of people that come to our class. I will say 11 years ago, that our typical audience was probably over 60 that liked, flower gardenings and, pot plants and things like that, hanging baskets. But we've seen a huge shift into a much younger population. The people that are just buying their house for the first time, people with, kids and 30 and 40-something. So we have seen a huge shift in the people that are wanting to grow their own vegetables and be more in tune and more sustainable in, not only what they're eating into their mouth, but what actually the services that their kids play on. So they're very much more in tune with how much water they're using and what they're putting on their lawn.
So if they're like me, they might think of their kids as some free labor, but it never really works out that way for me. I don't know why. It's just it's a lot more labor. So let me ask you, you both have kind of mentioned rainwater harvesting. So let's talk about that. I'm sure a lot of people hear rainwater harvesting, and if they understand what it means, they may think, oh gosh, that's probably really difficult to do. I've got to retrofit my entire house to do that. That's not necessarily the case. So why don't you just tell us what rainwater harvesting is, and what kind of things the people that are you're working with can do.
Yes, so this is Daniel. Rainwater harvesting is just the process of capturing, diverting, and storing rainwater for future use. Rainwater can be used for any kind of practice that you would normally use municipal water from, especially outside in the landscape. It tends to be salt-free, chlorine-free. You don't have any of the issues with that we see, especially with tropical plants, the burning of the leaves, and really it's the engineering or the mechanics of rainwater harvesting could be as simple or as complicated as you want. We kind of our beginner class is that rain barrel class where we take recycled 55-gallon drums, HDP plastic, so it's not leaching anything out, and we could set those on the downspout of a gutter. We could set those just in the natural eave of a roof, and our typical homes are going to harvest way more water that can fill into that barrel, and so it's easy for people to see the barrel filling up. The other thing that we see quite frequently with those classes, the people that have graduated from those classes, is that they start to notice how quickly the water in a 55-gallon barrel is used outdoors in the landscape. So maybe it could irrigate a 10-foot by 10-foot area to a depth of about 6 inches, and that may not be a whole lot. And some of that, I think the people that aren't specifically sold on rain barrels will argue that it really is just a drop in the bucket. But really, I think what we hit home with is that it's easy to do, and it's a simple way to educate people with the basics of rainwater harvesting, so much so that we see many people that have taken the rain barrel class will start to come back and get 1, 2, 3, 4 rain barrels in addition, and then take our larger tank classes where we focus on how we could harvest water in 250, 500 gallons, 1,000-gallon cisterns, and then you really have a substantial amount of water to use on the entirety of the landscape. And there's even some classes that we would partner with ARCSR, the American Rainwater Catchment Association, where people could, if they wanted to, get different filtration systems and use that water inside. And we've done that with our new water and land resource building here on campus, where we have a 30,000-gallon cistern and bring the water inside to flush the commodes, which is really exciting. It's a dirty job. This is Clint, and I'll kind of add to that. Our Rainbow program is probably one of our most successful programs. We've done in the Metroplex alone about almost 25,000 barrels. And in a typical rainfall year in North Texas, a 55-gallon barrel can collect on average in a normal year. Well, we don't really have normal years anymore, but over 2,000 gallons of water. And so people see how fast it fills up, but they also see how fast it goes down. And so it makes people understand that water from the tap, we turn on the tap and it's always coming out. So we don't really have a value of water that it's going to run out. But once they have a rain barrel and that's their water, they've captured it, they're in charge of it, and then when they utilize it and it's done, they become much more frugal with it on what I'm going to use my water for. Sure. Am I going to water my entire lawn? No, you're not. But am I going to water my very special plants that I love? Absolutely. And so people, it's an aha moment for them that I say it's like a lake level. As your lake goes down, you have to really conserve. You have to really, until it rains again, have to really be cognitive of where you're going to use your water. And that's what people do. And so I think those people that do rainwater harvesting really get it and understand that it's a behavior change and something that's very necessary.
So in addition to rainwater harvesting, you are also providing some workshops on gray water, if I'm not mistaken. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what gray water is and what types of things a homeowner can do regarding gray water?
Yes, so this is Daniel, we're definitely proponents of gray water harvesting, and whether that's in the summer months using the AC condensate, that's a great source that anybody could use to water their plants. It also just happens that there is more AC condensate when the air conditioner is running. There's also during the summer months, the heat of the summer, there's a greater demand for water. So the supply and the demand of that gray water kind of works out very well. and it makes sense to put it on some of your woody plants and your landscape beds rather than just to send that down the sewer or the storm drain. The other thing that's kind of an intro to gray water harvesting that some folks get into is the laundry to landscape. And so sending the water from your washing machine for your clothes, you would have to change out your soaps there to low phosphate soaps, but there are plenty on the market now that wash your clothes just as good. And then you could water a variety of different plant material there. The challenge, however, with the laundry to landscape is if you have that piped into certain areas of your yard, and then we're getting significant rainfall, in fact, record rainfall like we saw last year, then you need to prevent over irrigation, but you have to do something with the water coming from the laundry, and so many of those will have a valve where you can switch it and actually send that down to the black water channels as well if you don't need to utilize that water. But I think gray water is something as we move towards conservation, and especially if we do see extended periods of drought and perhaps the mega droughts that we see in the drought record, I think definitely that's a technique that we haven't taken full advantage of yet.
This is Clint. I think that one of the issues we have, too, is we have to, while we want all water systems to be safe, we also see that some of our cities they're proponents of conservation. They're not proponents of either rainwater harvesting or gray water use because of the issues of, backflow prevention and making sure that they're not cross-contamination with our public drinking water supply. And we are all for safety of our drinking water supply. But we're also for looking at uses and smart uses of reusing the water that we've brought into our home multiple times before we send it down to the black water line. So I always say we'll deal with any water until it turns to black water, and then somebody else can deal with it. But we have to be better stewards of the water, reutilizing what we have multiple times, whether we use it indoors, then we use it outdoors, before we send it on down to be treated again, or we're down into the other systems that will pick it up and then treat it again. So also saving costs on pumping and treating, but also saving time and money too. So I think the big picture of looking at as we move towards looking at water as one source, as rainwater and stormwater and all of those things as collectively and holistically, I think we'll come up with better solutions on how we can do that in the future.
So you all have, referred to this a couple of times, and I haven't asked you about it yet, but, food production, you're also helping people with growing some vegetables in their backyards and around their homes. And why don't you talk a little bit about that? Because it seems like, there's obviously this, a movement towards getting your food, especially your vegetables, locally. But I'm guessing there's a similar movement towards growing some of that yourself.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Todd. This is Daniel. In fact, a study that was published 2 years ago showed that 33% of the American population is now growing some of their own food at home, and that's
really? Wow.
The highest number we've seen in decades. So to kind of speak to that, we kind of cater to that clientele, that people that do want to grow some of their own food, whether that's in traditional vegetable gardens, kind of row type, or edible landscapes. A lot of folks in urban areas are limited in terms of space, and so you can incorporate edible plants throughout your ornamental landscapes, kind of taking multiple use of that same plant. We encourage people to plant native and adapted and more drought-tolerant vegetables and fruits. And then with the ones that they are growing that perhaps they're going to use more water than some of the other plants, we just want to show that if you incorporate compost, if you mulch properly, incorporate drip irrigation, perhaps even rainwater harvesting, you can be very efficient with the water you're using to grow some of your own food. And then also, if you are growing food locally in your own backyard, you're reducing your water footprint that's associated with buying and transporting our food to our doorstep. So the average piece of fruit at a grocery store travels about 1,200 miles to get to our doorstep. And if you're buying organic, like many folks like to do, that could be as high as 1,300 miles. And so there's water associated with refining the fuel and creating the tires and everything through that process. So there's a lot of reasons why we would want to grow food at home, but still important that we keep water conservation and stormwater management in mind when we do that.
So we've been talking about water, but there's also an air pollution component to some of what you're talking about. I know that mowing your lawn, produces a lot of CO2, and just kind of interested in the future. That's not been much of a focus, but I'm wondering if that might be more of a focus in the future as we move toward, especially cities move toward trying to reduce their carbon footprint.
Yeah, I think so. This is Clint. We see a lot of people looking at, utilizing, old school real mowers and electric mowers. But we're also seeing on a bigger scale is that cities and parks going, instead of having expansive park areas, having smaller park areas that are have high intensity areas for, soccer and baseball and those activities, but then also having the area away from those being converted more into prairie areas. And so prairie areas just came out of studies that are about as beneficial as sequestering CO2 as, trees are. And so we are seeing a huge resurgence in the urban areas as having pocket prairies and letting some of those areas go back to, or converting them back into native and more wild areas for not only for wildlife habitat, for butterflies, but for just what you said, for air quality issues and for reducing our footprint on maintenance cost and water cost and those type of activities as well. And we actually have one of those demonstrations on our campus as well. So in about 2 months, we'll be completely done with construction and open, and hope people will come up and see our Benny J. Simpson Eco Park and our 4-acre demonstration gardens and our Waterson's house. And so trying to practice what we preach and put our feet on the ground here. But Dan probably has more to add to that topic. I think you covered that great. I think all those reasons are important. Definitely two-cycle motors that we see a lot with landscape equipment are polluters. And so if we reduce our lawn areas and incorporate woody plants, native and adapted plants, prairie plants, then for sure, not only can we help with air pollution, but reducing maintenance cost, I think, is a big thing, especially for commercial areas.
So I want to come see your new facility when it opens up, because it sounds like it's really going to be fantastic.
We'll send you an invitation. Yeah, we'd love to have you.
Oh, great. Thank you. So we're gonna wrap up with this last question. How can people find out more about what you're doing? There's got to be some websites or social media contacts that you can provide to our listeners so they can follow up our conversation and learn more about your programs there at the Water University.
Sure, this is Clint. So our main website is wateruniversity.tamu.edu. And so there you can go and find out all of our upcoming classes. They'll all be posted there, wherever city that we'll be in, or find out information on soil health. Our plant search database is on our website as well. information on lawn care, rainwater harvesting, plant selection, maintenance and best management practices, as well as some of our DIY guides as well, and also our how-to videos. So one of the biggest pushes we've had recently is through social media and through those channels, we can't get to everyone, and not everyone wants to sit through a 2-hour class. And so we have a whole host of DIY videos on our website and on our YouTube page, which can be linked from our website on, very specific things on changing an irrigation nozzle to how to plant a plant, how to prune plants, how to conduct a catch can test, all of those activities that can make you be more water efficient in the landscape. And some really cool videos as well. So, and Daniel is our social media expert, so I'll let him talk about our Twitter and his Twitter and things like that.
Yeah, so if people want to follow us on social media, they just have to search at AgriLife Water U, and we're there on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Also, if you type in at AgriLife Water U on YouTube, you can find our channel. I'm at TX Plant Guy on all those platforms as well. And it's a great way to interact. We would love to hear back from your listeners. Also, it's a great way to answer questions. We like to interact with the public as much as possible and answer questions to help them grow a more lush, vibrant, water-efficient lawn landscapes or vegetable garden. And when people want to hit us up at AgriLife Water U or at TX Plant Guy, we'd love to connect.
Excellent. Thank you. Clint, Daniel, this has really been great. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and it's a timely one with August just around the corner. So thank you for joining me today on Talk Plus Water.
Awesome. We had a pleasure for you inviting us.
Yes. Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Great. Well, this has been Talk Plus Water, the podcast associated with the Texas+Water newsletter, which provides timely information on the spectrum of Texas water issues, including science, policy, and law. My guests today were Clint Wolfe and Daniel Cunningham, who are part of Texas A&M AgriLife's Water University. Texas+Water is published jointly by the Meadows Center for Water and the Environment at Texas State University, and the Texas Water Journal and the Texas Water Resource Institute at Texas A&M University. You can sign up for Texas+Water by visiting texas+water.org/newsletter. My name is Todd Votteler. I'm the host of Texas+Water. Let's talk water again soon.